Now, for some in Colorado's Asian American community, they aren't buying the words of the alleged gunman, saying the shooting in Georgia represents yet another dark moment in a difficult year.
As Denver 7's CB Cotton reports, amid a rise in anti-Asian acts and violence, some worry it's being ignored and underreported.
How we perceive Asian women to be this, we're going to say yes to everything and do everything.
And perceptions, Tron Wills, she says they prevent people from seeing the whole view.
This has been going on for so long that we just learn to live with it. And especially Asian women are like, we're not living with this anymore.
So she's using her voice to show everyone who she is.
I am a Vietnamese American woman. I was born and raised here in Denver. And I am first generation.
And to share what she and other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders face.
I never thought to lock our doors before the pandemic like we do now.
First, Wills, a salon owner and entrepreneur, says the ongoing pandemic brought words of hate.
I actually had clients call and say, I don't want to see any Asian women, at your salon. Please don't book me with an Asian woman. And that was the first time I broke down.
And this week brought actions she'll never forget.
Because I knew it was going to happen.
On Tuesday, law enforcement in Atlanta said a man gunned down 8 people. 6 of the people killed were women of Asian descent.
I see my mom, myself, my sisters, my employees, they are my family. And if anything was to happen to them, I don't think I wouldn't know what to do.
The suspect told police his actions weren't racially motivated.
This was a hate crime. No, he targeted 3 massage parlors. I don't know how much more evidence or common sense we need that this is what happened.
A report released on Tuesday by Stop AAPI Hate just prior to the Atlanta shooting shows Asian Americans were targeted in nearly 3,800 hate incidents in the past year.
There was worry for me to come to work today. Should we open? Should we not?
Will says the uptick in violence is just one product of racist language used by communities and leaders.
That language being used since the start of the pandemic, calling it things like the Chinese flu.
In Colorado alone in 2020, 37 incidents were reported, ranging from verbal abuse to vandalism, shunning, coughing and spitting, workplace harassment to physical assault.
Those incidents being compiled by Colorado nonprofits to better track the violence against those in Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. Deborah Lim of the Asian Pacific American Bar Association of Colorado says many attacks go unreported.
Our Asian community tends to stay silent about these things. I think it's really important that these incidents are reported and they're recorded so that we can begin this important work of systemic change.
Systemic change. Will says it will also take people changing their perceptions.
I think everyone has to do the work.
In the meantime, she's left to mourn and to fight for those who've been hurt or taken.
We're going to do our best. It's not going to be just today, and I know I'm going to continue to fight harder.
CB Cotton, Denver 7.
And leaders in Colorado's Asian American community say just because you don't hear a lot about hatred targeted toward the community doesn't mean it's not happening. They say some of that comes down to culture and wanting to avoid any added negative attention.
A lot of the reasons why you don't see as many of these things being reported is because within the Asian community ourselves, these are types of things we don't like to talk about. We don't necessarily like to go to law enforcement about it because of the fear that it would make things worse. I know people have been spat on, they've been coughed on, they've been verbally harassed, and they've been pushed. So all of these things have happened in Colorado as well.
And even before the incident in Atlanta, community groups here in Colorado were already planning discussions to find ways to combat and overcome Asian hate and talk solutions. There is a town hall tomorrow night. The online event starts at 6 p.m. and you can sign up by searching for the event on Facebook. And then on Monday, Aurora Police partnering with community groups to host a community conversation on hate crimes against Asians. That's happening online. That starts at 6 p.m. and you can find a link on the Aurora Police Department's Twitter page.
A new report is highlighting disadvantages that Black and Hispanic students face when applying for positions at our nation's military service academy, including the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. Now, the research comes from the Veterans Inclusion Project and the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center, and it looked at nominations from members of Congress, which is how students are considered for admission. It found that less than 15% of nominations are Black or Hispanic students. Black students receive just 6% of the nominations, even though they make up 15% of the young adult population. Hispanic students, 8%, but make up 22% of young adults.
The Adams County Sheriff today joined 7 local police chiefs raising concerns about a legislative plan to reduce the number of people in Colorado's jails. The Senate bill would stop officers from making arrests for traffic offenses, misdemeanors, and low-class felonies. In an open letter, the group says the legislation was crafted without input from police chiefs, and they believe it would have a harmful effect on crime rates and leave victims more exposed to repeat crimes if law enforcement can't put people behind bars. Last week, the Jefferson County Sheriff also raised concerns about the bill.
Well, today, the first state-run mass vaccination site launched at the Broadmoor World Arena in Colorado Springs. The drive-through site will be able to provide up to 6,000 shots per day. Great news here. It's going to run from 10 to 6 starting on Friday. You do need to book a spot in advance. The state plans to open 6 of these, one at Dick's Sporting Goods Arena and the ranch in Arapahoe County. It's part of the governor's plan to rapidly speed up the vaccine rollout as more doses become available.
And a first today at the Denver Detention Center. 22 people in custody at the downtown facility were given a first dose of the Moderna vaccine. And tomorrow, Denver health workers will vaccinate at the Denver jail anyone in custody who falls into the 60 and older group per the state's vaccination guidelines. Arapahoe County Sheriff Sergeant Nate Kyleberg spent a month on advanced life support fighting off COVID-19, and today he left the hospital, and some are calling it a miracle.
Our Denver 7's Addie Guajardo captured the emotional moment when he finally got to go home.
One step at a time. Family, officers, and medical staff lined the halls of Sky Ridge Medical Center. Cameras and cell phones ready to capture the moment as everyone anxiously awaited for the arrival of Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Nate Kyleberg. Fully conscious, he waved as he was rolled out of the hospital.
It's been 6 weeks.
Andrea Kyleberg can't wait to have her husband back.
He's my best friend. It was the best feeling to know that he was finally recovering enough that we could talk with him and hold him and hug him and just be able to be together.
His mother,
Lord, I surrender it all to you.
says her prayers were answered.
It was very, I'm so thankful. I'm just so thankful for all the support he's gotten, all the great care.
Kyleberg spent 44 days in the hospital battling COVID-19. His childhood friend recounted one of Kyleberg's final moments before he was put on life support.
I'm not going to make it off a ventilator. Please tell my family that I'm going to fight like hell and that I love them.
The officer that spent 2 decades patrolling the streets fought for every breath.
I walked over and gave him a hug, and I'm like, dude, I'm glad you're okay and love you, bro. He's like, yeah, I love you too, man.
Love tugging at hearts and tears.
It's just a little emotional, sorry.
Emotional and elated.
This whole time, the whole 45 days he's been in here, that we have had his back the whole entire time.
A team of medical staff.
Just pure joy.
That never gave up.
My angels, for sure. Looking out for him when I couldn't be.
Kyleberg is now off to rehab.
He's doing really well. He's made pretty much a miraculous recovery.
Addie Guajardo, Denver 7.